Good morning, Johan. Pleasure to have
Morning.
you on this little interview. It's my pleasure to introduce Johan Wallman from House of Reach, based over in Stockholm. Johan is the managing partner and co-founder of House of Reach, a firm that we know very, very well. In fact, we visited recently, didn't we? I think it was over there.
It was a pleasure having you here in Stockholm. I'm looking forward to see you again.
It was an interesting trip because we nearly lost Connor Hoey under a lorry. The roads were lethal, icy, but a beautiful city, Stockholm. So, Johan, just if you could, for our viewers, just give us a brief introduction to House of Reach.
House of Reach is a business development consultancy firm working with alternative and niche asset managers wishes to build their business in the Nordic institutional market. That is what we do. The elevator pitch.
Right. That's only that 3 floors in the elevator.
Yeah.
And clearly you cover the Nordics, which, for the benefit of people with less geography degrees than me, Norway, Finland,
Sweden,
and Denmark.
And Denmark. One should also, if you are supposed to be correct, mention Iceland, but we are not active in Iceland at the moment. We cover the 4 major Nordic countries.
Yeah, I think we probably want to avoid Iceland at certain times of the year because it'd be pitch black.
It can be a little bit lonely, I guess, as well. But there are institutional money on Iceland, maybe not in the same extent as before the crisis, but there is some money there. But to be honest, we are not focusing on Iceland in our business.
So let me focus going back to the Nordics generally, and I guess there's some key markets within the Nordics. But what do you see as the challenges for the region at the moment?
I'm not sure if there are challenges. Of course, I guess it's the same challenges that go through the rest of Europe. But the Nordic it's a fantastic market. It attracts a lot of asset managers wishing to explore, because it all comes down to that the 4 Nordic countries, at least that we are operating in, are there are plenty of institutional money here. It's quite sophisticated, so it's a very positive market to be in, and this is linked to the welfare systems that in our part of the world are quite advanced and built out. So the institutions here are getting bigger and bigger for every year, basically. But one should also remember at the same time that we're talking about 4 different countries with their own culture, languages, investment cultures as well. So in order to be successful in this part of the world, you really need to think through what's your value proposition to the investors, because the investors are both sizable, but they're also quite sophisticated. And the third thing is that, but it's also very much of a relationship-based market. So you need to know the right people, the real decision makers. Otherwise, it's really difficult.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's key for many markets, isn't it? Relationship management it's an old expression, but it still resonates today, doesn't it? I mean, that sort of leads on really to, I guess, my next question, which is, when you get approached by a fund manager, and no doubt you probably get approached like many people on a daily basis. What do you see are the do's and don'ts when going into the markets? So again, you mentioned about the 4 different markets. Are there different do's and don'ts for different markets within the Nordics?
Yeah, I think the first one we already talked a little bit about this is the fact realizing it's 4 different markets. So it can be the way that you can have the same proposition for all the markets, but it can also be the fact that maybe you're only relevant for one or a few of them. So you need to do your homework. The second thing is how you do it. The real decision makers that we are talking to, they are not interested in talking to salespeople in general, because it steals their time, and they wouldn't be doing anything else but talking to sales guys if they prefer to that. This is the tricky part of things. They of course, we in House of Reach have always been the sort of ambassadors, bearer of commercial interests, but I don't think people see us as sales guys. in that sense. We can have a conversation with the investor. We're not advising them in any way, but we can have a conversation about, and that is what we do actually. We talk with them about their needs. So it's not a push strategy in terms of business development, it's more of a pull. Yeah. We talk with the investor about their needs, what they're thinking or what they're looking for, and trying just deeply understanding the investor and its and the characteristics of what they are doing and what they're looking for. And when it's relevant, we are connecting them with our clients, which are the fund companies, the fund manager.
Yeah. I noticed. Sorry to interrupt that. I noticed, within House of Reach that you've all got very different backgrounds. Some of which are not traditional sales backgrounds, very much on the fund buying side. Do you think does that help you differentiate in the market? Does it help you actually when it comes to dealing with investors?
Yeah, I think it does. It's because, as you mentioned, we also come from the buy side, but we also come from the sell side. We've done that successfully over time as well. But if you look at the team, we are 5 people on a permanent basis here in Stockholm. We're 2 in Copenhagen, 1 in Oslo, and 1 in Helsinki. And then we have additional resources that we bring in on a project and need basis, if necessary. It can be public relations, marketing, brand, that type of or sort of structural organizational advice. But looking at our CVs, we and also our personalities, we are very different people with different personalities, with different backgrounds. Some of us have been running big pension portfolios, institutional portfolios. Some of us are bankers, some are more sort of head of sales, business development, and so I would say that we are quite a unique team, and that's a deliberate thing, because we want that. We want people to be who they are, doing what they do best. Yeah. And then we optimize the sort of setup in each and every dialogue we're having, depending on the nature of that dialogue. Yeah. So that's the thinking.
Do you think those skill sets help you when you come to identify a fund manager? Because it is very difficult, is it not, to separate the wheat from the chaff when it comes to working with a fund manager who you go with, because they may well be established or there may be a startup. But when you're looking at a fund manager, what do you think helps you make the decision as to whether or not you go with them or not? What are the key issues you're looking for?
I think that, of course, the quality in what they produce is, of course, that it's good and it's relevant based on our understanding of what the market is looking for. We will never take anyone on just for the sake of it, to get someone to pay a retainer. We really want to feel that there's a relevance. But we also take quite as good as we can, a good look on the cooperation, the how do we work together, the culture of things, the persons behind. Do we feel it's a match? And of course, it's like any relation, you can never be certain from day one that it will work out, but we do our best and try to be very transparent also with that. We try to be as open as possible about who we are. We understand that sometimes it's not a match. People are different. There's other service providers you can go with if you prefer that. If you want a more of a push strategy, classical sales guy, you can talk to some capital introduction firm, placement agent, whatever you want to call them, third-party marketer. But we prefer to do it our way, and we try to be as transparent with what we do and how we do it to our clients, so we can differentiate. And we just adding to your question, that we prefer just by looking at our client base, the smallest client of ours have 0 under management and will hopefully launch a fund in a year. Our biggest client have more than 700 billion euros under management, so it's quite sizable. And I guess the biggest one is also the only one we are transparent with, which is the European Investment Fund, EIF. It's an EU institution, and the reason why they're transparent is because they're an EU institution. They need to be transparent with who they're working with. Exactly. But the thinking from us is that we don't want to brag and build the House of Reach brand by showing off our excellent clients. We see it as our role to build their brand and their business. And if we do that successfully, it will of course reflect back on the House of Reach brand.
Just going back on something you said a minute ago, which is really your access to the managers. I mean, commitment from a fund manager, particularly say they're coming from overseas, from the US or from Asia, how much commitment should a fund manager make when it comes to the Nordics? I mean, which is clearly just one part of Europe. What sort of time would you expect from a fund manager coming in on an annual basis?
Well, how much time they need to spend on the Nordic business? Well, for us, we take when we sort of build a pipeline of opportunities for our clients. The normal process that we do the first number of meetings ourselves. So because we don't want to waste anyone's time with setting up irrelevant meetings, early stage discussions that will not lead anywhere. So when we bring in our clients in the dialogues, we know that there is an investor that is interested in this specific strategy. They have the possibility, i.e. that they have investor guidelines saying that they're allowed to invest in this asset class. Otherwise, of course, they can always change that, but that takes time. You need to go through the board and investment committee normally. And we also want to see that there's a reasonable time span that they are looking at this now. Of course, we can start discussions, plant seeds, and so forth, but there's no use bringing in someone unless they're sort of an exploration phase, other when it's more concrete. Then we can have the dialogue until it's more now and here.
Sure, but I guess you're looking for not just physical time with them coming over, but you also need access through like webinars and content generally. Is that a given? I'm assuming that's something that's well important to you as a business to have that content.
Yeah, absolutely. We produce that as well when it's relevant. Some of this all goes back to sort of the different countries and the different investment cultures. That for example, the most often used example I would say would be Sweden and Denmark. The starting point for a Swedish institutional portfolio is most often equity, and then you add to that fixed income and alternatives. While in Denmark, it's often quite vice versa. They start with the fixed income block, so they, in that sense, are sometimes Danish investors are sometimes more sophisticated in fixed income than Swedish ones, and also more experienced in the sort of broader sense of, for example, private debts. But on the other hand, given the world we're living in, where interest rates so far have been low or negative, and equity markets have been highly valued, there's a need and interest for alternatives in general, and also alternative fixed income. So you sometimes need to educate investors slightly. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, education is key, but particularly with the development of new ideas, I think that's really important. I mean, when you're launching a fund or you have a manager coming to market in the Nordics, are there some key criteria? I mean, things like AUM, the strategy itself. I mean, marketing we just touched on, but are there some key criteria that you would look for before you launch?
No, I would say that we are happy. We actually think it's kind of fun to help new ideas grow. But of course, to be realistic, if you have an unknown brand with very little under management, you really need to think through how you're going to grow, because you can't run around. And that's also connected to what type of strategy it is. Is it a strategy that will only be relevant for the really big institutions who have very little AUM? You will be looking for you need to staying power. That's what I'm trying to say, in order to get there. But we can help you gradually build that business by, for example, maybe not approaching the tier one institutions directly, but talking to smaller institutions that can invest some at least, and gradually build up the assets under management.
Yeah, okay. And obviously interesting times we're sitting here today in the end of Q1 2022. Things going on in Ukraine and stuff. Do you see changes in investors' appetite? I mean, basically, what's selling at the moment in the Nordics? Do you feel is there any one particular asset class, or is it a general thing? You feel?
I would say that in general there's interest in alternatives, but that is of course quite a broad spectrum of asset classes in itself. But it very much goes back to what we just talked about, the valuations of the equity markets and low yielding fixed income. But what we see in interest for is infrastructure. We see both in equity and debt. I would say that we also see an interest in different type of private debt. There are a lot of interesting ideas in that space. People are thinking about the implications of Russia and Ukraine, of course, but not the real impact from a financial perspective of Russia in itself, more of the side effects that this will bring to other parts of the economy. That is, of course, a concern. I would say that the view on China is something that occupies a lot of investors these days. Both those that are considering or have stopped investing in China, to those that are thinking about, okay, I will continue to invest in China, but maybe I will not do it in a merger market fund. Maybe I should do it in a separate vehicle.
What about ESG? Is ESG a big play in the Nordics?
Absolutely. It runs through a red line through every dialogues we're having. It's almost impossible to have something if you haven't sort of incorporated ESG, at least to the best practice possible. Everyone understands that the ESG doesn't mean the same thing for everyone around the world, and also the maturity of ESG practices differs from different parts of the world. So we respect that, but the investors also respect that. On the other hand, you need to comply with the investors' needs, but of course that varies depending on where you are in the world. And also in the Nordics, the ESG means different things for a Finnish investor to a Swedish investor and a Norwegian investor and so forth. So there are small nuances that you need to be aware of. It's not dramatic always, but you need to have a thinking and understanding about how to position yourself.
Yeah.
And when it comes to ESG, of course, the SFDR and the EU taxonomy is under development. We say it's not really there yet, so there's little guidance, but we will see how that will be interpreted in the markets going forward.
Yeah, there's lots of developments coming through, that's for sure. Johan, it's been great to catch up. I really appreciate your time today. I know House of Reach is going gangbusters out there at the moment. You're growing rapidly, and no, I really appreciate your time, and I hope we can catch up at some point in the near future, either over here in the UK or maybe a little trip again over to Stockholm.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing you again.
All right, you take care.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.